Awesome, everyone. Hi, I'm Sobi. I'm the co-host of the Unbuttoned podcast, where we'll have really awesome conversations with industry leaders across crypto, tech, finance, etc. It's our first episode, and today we have Hanson, head of U.S. sales at Flowdesk. Hi, Hanson. How you doing?
Hey man, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Hanson. I think a lot of people in the community, especially like at least Hyperliquid community, are pretty familiar with Flowdesk. You guys do a lot of stuff there, but for people that are not familiar, you want to give an intro on what Flowdesk is and what you guys do?
Yeah, no, happy to. So Flowdesk, at our core, we're a trading and financial services company operating solely in crypto. We've been around for 5 years. We have offices in the U.S., which is where I sit. Europe, our headquarters is in Paris, as well as an office in Asia and Singapore. We're about 200 people worldwide, and we operate, on a 24/7, 365 basis, supporting both exchanges and token providers on our market making, liquidity provisioning business lines, and then working with institutions, so asset managers, hedge funds, high net worth individuals on our OTC business line.
That's awesome. I think for a lot of people that don't know it, like Flowdesk, I think is one of the best groups I've engaged with. I use you guys a lot for my personal trading. For people that, maybe they're mostly like on-chain types of folks or relatively new to the financial markets, what can they anticipate if they were, a Flowdesk client? What are some of the type of services that you guys provide for these, institutions, exchanges, and individuals?
Yeah, so we can dive a bit deeper amongst those two. So I'll start with the market making side. So there we work either directly with the token issuer who's looking to launch their token and needs support for that TGE date, whether that's on chain or on a centralized venue. We're on 150 different plus different, I guess, exchanges or platforms. So we have a wide variety of ways we can support projects for that launch date. Additionally, post TGE, there's a lot of ways we can support them through our OTC business, which I'll get into in a little bit, but also dialing back a bit for how we work with exchanges. They might hire us as a DMM, right? So a designated market maker to support a specific amount of pairs on their exchange with specific KPIs. And then we obviously, get paid or compensated through a variety of different ways on that format.
Yeah, that's I think one thing people don't know about market making is how you guys have, I think, a unique approach. Flowdesk talks a lot about market making as a service and transparent regulated liquidity. From your perspective on the US sales side, what is fundamentally different about Flowdesk approach versus legacy market makers and brokers?
Yeah, so I think the actual inception of our company was our founder, Gilam, 6, 7 years ago. He's been, kind of in crypto for a long time. Personally, he was kind of just seeing what was going on in the space of these kind of, backroom shady deals, I think a lot of negative connotations associated with crypto market making. And that was for a variety of reasons. The space looked very different back then, but there's just this kind of more predatory aspect associated with a crypto market maker. It's still present today. We see a lot of this. People complaining and kind of talking on crypto Twitter, as everyone here knows. The inception of the company really was him wanting to change that, and that is at the core of our DNA. Whether we're trading a meme coin or a sophisticated financial asset, like what we do is professional. We are providing, deep liquidity on a 24/7 basis in a regulated, compliant way to our clients, no matter who they are. And that could be a BlackRock or it could be a Pepe meme coin, where. So, like what we do, we take it very seriously. We consider ourselves also crypto native. So I like to call us, the sophisticated crypto native actors in this space is kind of how we like to position ourselves. But really the inception of the company, going back to that, your original question was this market making as a service model where instead of a token doing a loan call option supply, and maybe for those who don't know, that's the product will loan a market maker, call it 1% of token supply, and then also give them options. A lot of founders and engineers in this space are not really financially savvy, and so they don't know that these options have a lot of inherent value in them. And that in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? We have to get paid for our services, so you're basically giving us this option for free, and then we are taking our tech stack, our peoples, our bandwidth, and all of our attention and balance sheet to supporting your token on the exchanges we're hired to do so. So at face level, it's a very fair type of outcome, right? You're giving me something, I'm giving you something, everyone's happy. But in reality, what we see is these zero accountability, kind of shady backroom deals, and it's just the token gets dumped, bought back lower. There's a lot of prop trading involved, and our founder, he was like, "I'm going to switch this model up," and that's how we came up with this kind of more retainer market making as a service approach, where the product would loan us basically their token as well as stable coins, and then pay us a monthly amount, whether that's 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, depending on the scope of the project. And so that business today is, a bulk of our revenue. But over the last 5 years, we've obviously expanded our product set as well.
I think, I just wanna double touch on that as someone that has, launched a token before. It's really difficult to price this stuff. Because that like you said, people need to make money, and I think I wouldn't say that they're necessarily, like, taking advantage of it, but most founders just don't know how to price risk, right? Like, they're not very good at you're building your company, you're not necessarily an options trader, especially, like, options in crypto, very difficult. They're also European style options for what people don't know. So European and US strike, options are very different. A European option, you can only exercise it around the expiration date, versus the US option can be exercised any other time. It was awesome to see what you guys are doing in the sense of making it very almost like software as a service model where or liquidity as a service, I think is a better way to term it. But
Exactly.
you guys are like, hey, you have a flat fee. This is your monthly fee. We support all these different venues, and I think there's a reason why your guys' market making business has grown so much. So just wanted to give you guys some flowers for that. You are head of U.S. sales, and I know you've had a really interesting career. We've known each other for a while. I think it would be interesting if you gave a little bit of kind of your crypto origin story, and then what happened over the last few years that made you go, you know what, I need to go kind of all in on a flow desk and grow out this type side of the business.
Yeah, no, would love to talk about that. I've been in crypto personally for, I guess, a decade, a little over a decade now, which feels like a long, long time. But professionally, I guess it's now 5.5, 6 years, call it. So I've been at Flowdesk for the last 2.5 years. Was hired to really build out our U.S. franchise as well as our global OTC product line. Before that, and kind of what led me here was I worked at Genesis Trading, which at the time was the world's largest, prime broker in the space. For those who don't know, the firm ultimately had exposure in some, I guess, it went bankrupt because of what happened with Three Arrows and FTX. That's a whole other rabbit hole that we don't need to go down right now. But eventually, the majority of the team that was in the front office, myself included, we ended up coming to Flowdesk and kind of rebuilding that franchise with a very client service based approach, high touch, white glove service model that really complemented the existing market making stack that Flowdesk had built in the 3 years prior to us joining. And so that's been a really fun journey for me personally, for the firm. We've grown a ton. We've raised money while I've been here, so that's been a really cool thing to be a part of as well. As just like an entrepreneurial person in this space, and so there's a lot of exciting things that we're coming out and looking forward to in the years ahead. Tokenized RWAs, equities, all this type of stuff. And we want to get our hands dirty. We like doing a bunch of stuff. We're, like I mentioned, we're very crypto native. We do on chain market making. We run nodes. Like we love just being an active participant in the crypto ecosystem, no matter which facet that is.
I'd say you guys are very crypto native in terms of understanding the culture, the memes, all that stuff, but also on the side of like building, infrastructure for different projects. You guys are very involved in the Hyperliquid ecosystem, which I want to touch on. But before that, I think what a lot of people don't know, I'd say, is just how different the regulatory environment really is now, right? We were all kind of building in one way or other last like few years. It was really, really tough, especially in the US. As head of US sales, how have you seen the regulatory environment kind of grow and change that allows you guys to now feel like confident about, growing the North American team and growing your presence here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's evolved. I can't even tell you how exponentially over the last, 2.5 years that I've been at the company. For, I guess, a quick story, we went through, I think, 4 or 5 different banking providers during, the kind of Operation Choke Point 2.0 when we were first trying to start this business. And it purely was because we were in crypto. Like, we're regulated in Europe. They just wouldn't touch us. Or if they did, we kind of can like managed to sneak in. As soon as something got flagged, we got an email the next day saying, "Hey, you guys have, 3 weeks to withdraw all your money," and that's basically it. And so that was a very stressful time, as we're trying to start our business, right? And, we have a ton of clients we're looking to onboard, and we're not only building like an external brand to get people comfortable trading with us and doing business with us, but we also have to build all these internal tools and processes. And a big core driver of that is fiat and banking rails. it seems like such an easy thing that you never want to have to worry about. But obviously in this business, right, the ability to support our clients where they need to trade and settle is very important, because if you say, hey, you want to come trade, whether that be bilateral options on Bitcoin or some on-chain, meme coin that just launched, and you need to fund that trade, and they don't have stable coins and you have no bank account, you have no chance of even having the conversation to get to win the trade. So that's been a big evolution for us, and something we're obviously very much in tune with here as we're growing our business, not only in the US but also globally. So I kind of mentioned our other offices, and we are also in the process of getting like our VAR license out in Dubai. So like there's a lot of different regulatory aspects that we have to be mindful of across our 10 plus entities. But in the US specifically, I can't tell you. I guess I probably can't tell you because you experienced it yourself as a founder, right? Like just the shift in conversations with the regulator. I've been in the SEC's office. Like I've spoken to these people. Like the mentality around crypto. It's not really reflected in prices right now, but like there is this massive, massive market structure shift taking place at the federal level.
Yeah, I think, to highlight that, I could share some from my side too. Like, it was pretty much impossible to be a US-based founder and try to do things the right way, which is why you had a lot of people kind of run these like scam coins, or, meme coins became a thing because there was like no real business, no real protocol, etc. It was really, really difficult. What the SEC used to do under Gary Gensler, they would just literally, they would literally just subpoena you, find out how much money you have in your bank account, and then fine you for that exact amount and be like, "You can pay this fine
That's
or we'll sue the
insane.
shit out of you." Right? And we were lucky we had some really good lawyers. Wilkie Farr, our lawyer there now, is actually the head of the CFTC now. Michael Selig, and he was awesome. He was super crypto native, had like a Moonbird PFP, which was a very
Nice.
refreshing type of person to speak to. So excited to see what he does now as the chairman of the CFTC. Another thing I think you guys do that's really interesting to me as far as like other market makers go, like right, people have heard of the winter mutes of the world, et cetera, and they see that they run maybe on chain positions and market make there, but I don't ever really see them participate to the degree that you guys do with regards to helping incubating and growing ecosystems. You guys are investors in Button, which we appreciate your guys' support there. You especially has have been super helpful to us, especially in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. You guys, are always sponsoring community events, hackathons. It seems like every good protocol, you guys are on their cap table, right? You guys are running a validator or a node or whatever. Really engaged in the improvement protocols, understanding what the community wants. What led you guys to really form a thesis on Hyperliquid and then kind of double down on it and be like, hey, we're not only going to hold this asset or, invest in this ecosystem, but we're going to build public goods, fund public goods, stuff like that.
Yeah. How much time do you got? Because I could go on for hours about this, as you can tell, from
Yeah.
my
Well,
from my
is that the
sweatshirt.
VIP hoodie right there? What's going on? Let's get a little fit check.
This is the builder hoodie that they passed out at Token 2049 last year.
Damn, is it comfy?
So it's very comfy. You'll get one this year, don't worry. Yeah, so I mean the story of us, really going down and committing resources, our kind of mental bandwidth, our firm's kind of, messaging behind the ecosystem is really simple, right? It's the best product in crypto. It is a extremely high morally aligned team. It represents, in my opinion, personally, like what crypto can be and should be in a lot of different aspects. And, that message resonated with a lot of us at the firm internally. And, I just kind of personally pushed like, hey guys, like we are a professional trading firm. We operate in crypto. This is the best, trading product that's crypto native, fully on chain, right? Permissionless, open source, like all these like great, things that we just like. That's why we all work, right? I worked in traditional finance before. A lot of people at our firm did. Like we all left that world for a reason. It's obviously a different reason, but directionally aligned. And we just saw that what they were building, and we decided to, hey, this is like we should support this however we can. And so, we were definitely like later than other firms. I will admit that. I think maybe some of us personally were a bit earlier, but like eventually getting like the firm's, capital to be committed and like resources takes a little bit longer as a client focused, firm. Like I kind of mentioned, just a quick anecdote, exchanges might pay us to market make, right? So when I bring to our traders, hey, we should integrate here, they're like, okay, cool. Like, what are they going to pay us? I was like, no, 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 that's not how this works. And in hindsight, I wish we started earlier for the whole airdrop. We would have made a lot more money, but it's all good. But really, like how we got into it was summer of 24 is when we really started to see, okay, this is like going to take off. At the time, the EVM was just a concept. There was no EVM. It was really just hypercore. The token hadn't launched yet. The community was very, very small. It still is candidly quite small. It's very small. Like in the Korea hackathon we sponsored last year, there was probably 200 people there, maybe 300. That's like big flagship conference in Asia, which is a very predominant crypto market, and so like we're still very early to the Hyperliquid ecosystem, which is exciting for me as just a builder, an investor, a trader. Like there's a lot of things to capture value as the pie gets bigger, but um at the time when we first started trading there, like I mentioned, it was a very tiny ecosystem. And so it was just really easy to get to know people. And that's when we started to make investments. I was like, okay, so we met the Felix team, which we're investors in. We are investors in Hyperbeat, Hyperfi. We're investors in you guys now. We're investors in Kinetic, and I'm a personal investor in some other projects. And so it was just really just, hey, we're here. We want to like help. How can we help? What do you guys need? And so, the real value add for us as an investor is usually like relationships and product feedback, as well as just like using your product as a on-chain, market participant and kind of giving that iterative feedback as teams are building out and bringing our balance sheet and capital to help kind of bootstrap that growth flywheel.
Do you think, so I'm curious about this as someone, you've been around since the early days of Genesis, kind of seeing, market making, all of like there was a huge expansion of credit, all this stuff in 2020. We could maybe touch a little bit on that, but it's so interesting to see like sometimes I think if you're in crypto, you'll compare something to something that was tried before and be like, oh, this is like bullshit, doesn't make sense. Like a lot of people were like, oh, Hyperliquid's not going to be anything bigger than GMX or anything bigger than DYDX. Not to say those teams haven't done well. Like, what GMX has done with GLP was super interesting. You're right. DYDX was one of the first performative on chain kind of platforms. And again, maybe the regulatory environment also changed a lot of things. In general, I'd say that maybe there's lot of unique things of Hyperliquid
Yep.
that if you weren't involved in the community, it might have not shown up on the surface level of like, wait, this is actually different than it looked like a lot. So I think what a lot of people thought was Hyperliquid was just another car, and we've built a bunch of cars in the past, but it's really an airplane, right? And
Yeah.
so how did you guys kind of arrive to that conclusion? And maybe were there any biases that you had to overcome for being in the space so long and be like, oh, this is different, or maybe you guys had some of that knowledge from being market makers and going, wait, actually, like this on-chain venue is as performative as these off-chain venues that we're used to. Would be interesting to hear that perspective.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, it was a combination of just personal, anecdotes of using all the products you mentioned before, and not just myself, right? Other people
Yeah.
across our firm globally. We've all been doing this for a long time, and I think the one thing in crypto you can't buy, right, is experience. And like you have to use the products that you're doing. I think that's also what makes us such a great like venture investor. We actually know like what these products should be doing because maybe we're doing it in our personal capacity or like we have done it at some point in time. So, but back to your question, the real light bulb moment was to me, it's not just the perp dex. I think that's like the biggest thing. Everyone thought, oh, it's just another perp dex. It's just going to be like DYDX. The token's going to get farmed to zero. Everyone's going to leave after, the airdrop is all these like things that you've heard over and over again. And in fact, it was quite the literal opposite, right? The token was quite literally up only since day one. Obviously, it's gone through its own, price volatility and discovery the past year. But the first couple of weeks, it was, literally just a straight line up. And that was because so many people were underexposed to it. The thesis was very much like you had to like do a lot of work to like understand it. And a lot of people in investing in crypto are lazy. So they don't want to they don't want to bridge. It was hard to buy. It still is hard to buy. It's actually incredibly difficult to buy if you're particularly, a US investor, right? You can't use the exchange. You can't access it on a Coinbase or a Robinhood or things like that. So actually now on Robinhood you can, but these things have taken time to develop the rails to onboard new users to Hyperliquid, and that's something I'm super excited about. Is there's a ton of great teams building. HyperDash is a great terminal, PvP bot. They're now powering the Kinetic markets, which is launching a bunch of stuff. There's a ton of great teams and builders in the space that are basically now dedicating their livelihood to onboarding the next billion users to Hyperliquid without them even knowing it. And to me, that's a super exciting prospect. Obviously what you guys are building at Button is extremely promising, and like just getting people to this ecosystem without them having to know that they're using it, but they just are using a great product is exactly what we should all be working for.
I totally agree. I think it's one of Hyperliquid is one of those things where it's, as advertised, I'd say. A lot of the times you'll use a product and you're like, "Shit, I'm actually kinda bearish on this," but the token goes up versus
Yeah.
Hyperliquid, I feel like the product is quite good, and the token price reflected that and sustained that for a while. Obviously, there's some market volatility, et cetera, but I was honestly quite surprised to see where Lighter is performing relative to Hyperliquid. I wonder, if there's timing, all that stuff that happens too. But with regards to where Hyperliquid is going now, for maybe what people don't know, right, there was growth mode that was just initiated by the Hyperliquid Foundation. Growth mode significantly reduced the fees. Something that people would mention, I saw this on the timeline a bunch, was hey, these equity perps have really high funding rates. And so
And
I think Trade XYZ came and brought that down to now it's
yeah,
around like SOFR
they
plus two.
standardized it.
Where do you guys see like equity perps going? I mean, I think we're kind of bullish on equity perps, but like, I think that it would be good for the audience to hear why you guys are bullish on equity perps. You guys are an international firm, right? Having the ability to give some of your clients now access to those equity perps could be interesting to hear if there's any anecdotes there. And then also, what do you guys think about like spot equities? Do you think you'll ever see that on chain? And how do you see that overall evolving?
Yeah, no, I think to me this is besides one other thing which I'll mention, the biggest catalyst for Hyperliquid since the products come to life basically, right? Crypto volumes are just so tiny relative to the broader world of financial assets. Like we're just such a tiny speck of dust
Yeah.
in the big universe, right? Like people think crypto is a big asset class. It's not. The whole thing is like 3 trillion market cap, maybe, and a lot of that's inflated, right? With FDVs of tokens that are not actually priced where they should be. You're seeing there's multiple companies that are singly bigger than our entire asset class. So that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that just to kind of frame the conversation that the TAM, total addressable market cap for equity perps is so large and so underpriced. That's to me, it's such an exciting trade still for that reason. And I'll explain a bit more. So the biggest crypto's gone through like these 0 to 1 moments, right? We invented first it was Bitcoin, and it was kind of like, distributed ledgers with ETH. Those are both 0 to 1 moments. And then there was a bunch of stuff built around them. The third one was kind of stable coins, right? And we're seeing a bunch of stuff be built around those. And then we had perps, or maybe perps and stable coins. These are like true 0 to 1 moments that have a like brand new financial asset for the global world of finance. And those will obviously inherit a ton of value. The perp instrument makes this industry hundreds of billions of dollars a year, spread across many different companies, but like that instrument and all the auxiliary businesses built around it makes over $100 billion a year minimum. And so the you apply that to just crypto, and now you're taking in another asset class with new users who have never even heard of what a perp is, right? Like you can't trade perps on Apple, on Google, on all this stuff. Well, now you can. And think about all the different day traders and just options traders from a retail perspective, as well as institutional, who use these instruments for either leverage, speculation, or hedging, who will eventually, I think it'll quickly accelerate too, over the next, call it 3 to 5 years, they will prefer to trade perps just because it's an inherently better option, or sorry, not to play a pun on word, but it's a better asset instrument to express leverage than an option is. And so that will bring like quadrillions of like annual volume. It's such an astronomical number to perps, and the best way to do that, or the best place to trade that, will, in my opinion, be Hyperliquid for a lot of different reasons. I think open source wins 9 times out of 10, and I think we're living in those 9 times right now. There might be another universe somewhere else where it's the one time, but I think the one we're living in is one of those nine. And so that to me is a super exciting catalyst. I think we're just going to onboard quite literally billions of people to trading perps, and specifically perps on equities. And so that means that this flow, this volume, it's not going to capture 100%, but doesn't need to, because the total pie is just going to get so big, much bigger than it is today.
Yeah, I think what's interesting that people are noticing in CT is, and well, at least what I'm noticing in CT, right, is this kind of almost complacency. I think, like time based capitulation, things like that, where the issue with this cycle, I would say, versus other cycles, and like to hear your take on it too, is financial nihilism, I think, was at the forefront of this cycle with things like meme coins. market cycles for single name assets became extremely compressed, right? You would have what used to be 2 years of price action would happen in a month, right? And the average hold time has gone down significantly. Rotations have sped up. And what's interesting is what you're seeing in equities right now is what we used to have in crypto, where it was this belief in something, right? Um, if you don't have belief, people always say you can't borrow conviction. If you don't have belief, you can't hold these assets for very long. Right now, in traditional equities, right, people are, it's so easy to create a thesis around, oh, I need to own defense stocks. I need to own, Intel. I need to own whatever is the AI trade, whether you're in the storage side of like SanDisk or, NVIDIA or I need to own energy, right? There's all these things that like you're being told and your mental model for the world is like these are going to be monumental. Now, equity perps actually allow those that volume to be expressed in crypto, create, fees, revenues, etc. And overall, I think it actually showcases the value in crypto where like, hey, I can actually come on here and go and trade XYZ and trade silver at 40x leverage without having to, sign up for a Moomoo account or sign up for a brokerage account, and you could do that with $500, right? Like in some of these other platforms, you need to have some level of capital to express that. You can trade via these mobile apps. Like I use Liquid a lot. Shout out to Liquid guys. I think they're a really good team. EdgeX is doing really well too. How do you think the equity perps themselves are going to kind of maybe for traditional finance or maybe for people that are on the space now that are nihilists because I remember a lot of the meme coin guys have never even used Hyperliquid, and now more and more of them are. Do you think it is like a powerful instrument where people can go like? I don't think people realize how powerful perps are because they take for it like just because it's Bitcoin. They're used to being able to trade Bitcoin or ETH or whatever. But now that I can trade Intel on chain, do you think that is a meaningful mental kind of a relationship that's being made?
Yeah, right. The crossover between crypto and equity investors has never been more apparent, right? And I think that's twofold. It's one, this kind of I think people are tired, dude. Like, I'm tired. Like this cycle was kind of demoralizing, like at to a
Yeah,
point, right? Like, okay, in 2017, I remember doing like my first ICO, and I was like, "Fuck yeah,
yeah.
we're gonna solve something on the blockchain," right? That was like the
Supply chain,
dude,
dude.
yeah, like Engine Coin was like a gaming. It was like we're gonna like take over Steam. We're gonna replace Steam on the blockchain, stuff like that. Or all these Omise Go has a partnership with Thailand McDonald's. Like these headlines are like ingrained in my brain because that's what you believed in, and then you bought this token, and at the time the universe of tokens was so small too, right? So you didn't need like today, you just need so much more influx of capital to have the same like reflexivity and like up only than you did in 2017 and then even 2021, right? There was just maybe similar like magnitude of capital rotating within crypto, but the investable universe was much smaller then. So it felt like everyone was winning. And then that's that like positive reflexive loop of like I can believe in this asset class because like I feel good. I'm trading, all my friends are making money. Like whatever. That's the whole like mania thing, and then it blows off, and that's that. But the going back to why perps are on equities is kind of like I think so popular right now is because we're all sitting here watching every risk on asset on the planet explode, right? Silver, gold, like, and then
Yeah.
crypto is just doing nothing. Like it's literally just sitting here. We're kind of like sometimes we're positively correlated, sometimes we're negatively correlated, sometimes we're over correlated or under correlated, but like in the broad scheme of things, right, we're not really doing much. And then you're kind of sitting here like, damn, like I should have just longed AI or silver like
Yeah.
2 months ago and I'd be up 300%. And so the crypto has lost its uniqueness of being that like expression of like super risk on behavior because it's moved right now. Like the beasts have moved to the stock market for like AI and tech and all this stuff. Um, Now that you can trade all that stuff just using crypto, it's super bullish. And that's also right. Like the end state is we should be trading anything we want using stable coins because like stable coins and perps are better technology that just happen to be built using crypto. But like we don't need to be trading crypto to use that better technology, is how I'll put it.
Yeah, I would say that even on the stablecoin side, I remember like last year, you guys changed banking providers, and I was trying to deposit some money into my Flowdesk account. And multiple times I got the banking routing info or whatever. There was some memo shit you have to
Yeah.
put in wrong. And I was like, this just sucks. Like my money's stuck for like 2 weeks. Don't know what to
Yeah.
do. versus
Yeah,
I just
you had to like go to the bank, right? And like
I had to go in the
go
bank,
and
and
put
then they look at you like
yeah,
a criminal. They're like, "What the hell is Flowdesk?" And I'm like, "Oh, buy commodities." Can't tell them I'm about to buy like chain link options or whatever the hell I was doing.
yeah,
Versus, I'm in a Telegram chat with you guys, and I just go, "Oh, let me put some money somewhere," and then Krishna just drops me a little address, and you're done, right? And you've seen interactive brokers now like start taking USDC deposits. I like your point about eventually we'll be able to just trade everything, and I think it's interesting too to see how different some people are viewing the Hyperliquid ecosystem where, Van Eck put out this big report. Some of the digital asset treasury companies in Hyperliquid are actually staking their hype, right? They're deploying it across DeFi because I think it's an easier sell for these people. And something I saw on like the Tech Bros podcast network, really good piece of content was when I think Jeff was on there and they were mentioning how Hyperliquid has done, there's always been this kind of unicorn startup in traditional software, traditional technology after the AI paradigm happened. Just to kind of mansplain this to the audience, but people would always say like, "Oh, one day you'll be able to build a multi-billion-dollar company with a very small team," and you've seen this expressed in crypto, actually, mostly. You
yeah.
see Tether, the
Many
Many
times
times,
too.
yeah. You see Tether, Pump Fund. I don't know how big Phantom Team is, but they're printing, right? But really, Hyperliquid is like 11 people making $1 billion a year, right?
Crazy.
Throwing most of that money back at buying the token. From your guys' side on the institutional side, what kind of I feel like there's a lot of innate or unexpressed institutional demand on Hyperliquid mostly because it's difficult to custody, it's difficult to buy. Hopefully Coinbase gets their shit together and supports it soon or some because I think Anchorage and some of these other custodial services are now. But have you guys had any of these conversations with folks that are like, oh wait, this asset's a little bit different. Like, yes, it's a digital asset, but it's making so much money. They're driving buybacks like we're used to in traditional equities.
Yeah, no, I mean, 1,000%. It's, kind of quickly going back to our last conversation of like just the investable asset
Mhm.
universe in crypto. Like there was this exhaustion of like millions of coins were created, like millions of coins were created in the last 2 years alone. And but the investable asset class, in my opinion, is kind of like five, maybe. You can
Yeah.
make the argument for a couple of them, maybe probably 10 if we're, I want to be generous to to other projects, but it's Bitcoin and Hyperliquid for me personally. And that like those that's the bar, right? And
Yeah.
it's like it's really hard to overcome that bar to go invest in anything else. I might go trade something else, but like that's not an investment, right? That's a trade, and maybe on a shorter midterm horizon. And then you're ultimately wanting to take that P&L and accumulate more Bitcoin and hype. And so that conversation that you mentioned, this thing's 11 people. It's the fastest growing company on earth. You've never heard of it. They make $1 billion a year. They use all of it, 99%, to buy back their stock on the open market. The team there's no external investors, there's no dilution on the cap table. Everything the team has done has really been to drive value back to the shareholders or the token holders. And there's all this, tailwinds associated with it, improving regulation, right? We're gonna get regulated perps in the US. The global admin, I will call it, not just any one country, but is adopting crypto. All this stuff is going to accelerate. And more importantly, depending on how you think of it, but from an investment thesis perspective, like more and more people are going to be trading financial assets, whether we like it or not. Prediction markets are going
Yeah.
crazy right now. People like to trade, and it's just like human nature. You want to like, oh, hey, I think I'm bullish or bearish this. Like, I'm gonna go express that view, and I want to do it. Sitting on my couch, scrolling on my phone. Like that wasn't possible 10 years ago. Think about if you ever wanted to do a sports bet like in college, right? You had like a bookie Venmoed.
Yeah.
And these days, you just open up DraftKings or whatever you use, and or Kalshi or Polymarket, and you're good to go. So that those trends won't stop; they'll only accelerate. But going back to the kind of like investment thesis for the institutions, they can really understand this product. It's got cash flows, it's got like, a PE ratio. It's like it's super cheap when
Yeah.
you
Super
compare it
cheap.
to it's super cheap when you compare it to all this other stuff that they're used to, and you kind of lay out this roadmap. And so, some of those sell side banks now are picking up coverage of it, like equity research analysts, which is great, partly because of like the DATs, right?
Uh-huh.
Hyperion and Hyper Strategies. And those two firms are as well are doing a great job of educating, Wall Street. They've both gone on Bloomberg and CNBC and stuff of like hey, you guys have never heard of this thing, but you really should. And not only should you know about it, like you should own it because this is the future of finance, right? The house all of finance is kind of like a saying, and it's a saying for a reason because that is the goal of the team and of the community building around it.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap up here soon. I want to get your take on a couple more things. I like to do this thing called little deal, no deal, or big deal. Do you think tokenization, little deal, no deal, big deal, right? Like we were hearing about it. I think people mostly view tokenization as, maybe treasury bills on chain. But
Hmm.
what do you think about that? You think it's going to be a big deal, little deal, or no deal?
Big deal. Do you want me to explain
Yeah,
why?
yeah,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
all right. I didn't know if it was like a
Yeah,
rapid
I thought I
fire.
was going to go rapid fire, but I think it's just I have that question and one other one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's a big deal, partly because of how archaic the financial system, like the infrastructure is of traditional finance. And for people who do know, they'll all be nodding their heads, right? Listen to this. For people that don't, just like a quick example, like things still take 2, 3, 4, 5 days to settle, right? Like that makes no sense in the
Yeah,
age of the internet.
yeah,
We should not be waiting to send an international wire. It could take a week or two. Like that's just not like money is fast, it's transmissible. Like we should be like settling things instantly, and that's like what blockchain, technology enables. And so when I'm saying it's a big deal, it's more so in the sense of, yeah, it's cool. We can like have a share represented on chain and I can go trade it on, Jupiter. But like it's actually much cooler that now stocks can be like represented or ownership of really anything on chain to settle, instantly. And that's going to unlock a ton of efficiencies for not only consumers and users of these products longer term, but like actual like think we'll start to see like a ton of people, or companies like right size because they'll have better technology and systems as the world is upgrading its infrastructure. So like that's why it's a big deal in my opinion. And that's going to take a long, long time. Like some
yeah,
of these companies, right, they're still using like Microsoft 98 in these like banks, right? It's like there's no reason why they
yeah,
should, but like some engineer that like they don't want to like piss off is I'm going to keep it this way, but like our generation that'll all change.
yeah. Like I think literally like 95% of ATMs in the United States dead ass use like Windows 95 or something. Like none
Yeah,
use it.
which is like absurd. I don't know
Yeah,
if you've like recently I went to my girlfriend had to get her passport renewed. And
yeah,
like going to the DMV, the post, like all this stuff, like is using these archaic systems. You have to print out everything. I'm not saying like I'm totally not for like Big Brother government. That's like the opposite of what I'm saying. But there are many things that can be just like improved from an infrastructure perspective that'll ultimately probably use some form of like crypto or blockchain technology to tokenize data.
I agree. My last question for you, and then maybe you can leave with some closing thoughts on what people should know you guys are working on, etc. But what is something you've recently changed your mind on?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I have one way to take it, but it's not related at all to crypto. It's about like my diet, which I don't think that's that interesting for this
Bro, this
for
look
this call.
maxing, looks maxing, dude.
But no, dude, I've had to eat so much more protein than I thought I had to. Is where
Yeah,
that thought led to
protein maxing.
protein maxing. Everyone should do it. But I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't realize how big of a deal the user base was of like crypto, like outside of crypto Twitter. And I think that's
Oh,
probably a bias that a lot of people might fall into, like in our social circles and just kind of people we interact with, right? Like you're in the same Telegram chats all the time, maybe just Discord or whatever like your community is. I think people have to, I personally I forgot it's much bigger than that for
yeah,
a lot of different reasons, right? I'm in North America, like I'm not in Europe or Asia, so I don't even know those communities. But like, I think for me, I always thought somehow, because I was kind of mission driven on like my clients, my relationships, like my circles to like get business done. But like, I always forget about there's so many other people that are doing like stuff in this space, and we should remember that we're all working towards something similar is how I'll leave that. And I tend to forget that sometimes. So I'm trying to do better at like recognizing that like why I got into crypto in the first place is probably the same reason why 90% of everyone else working in the space did as well.
yeah,
And I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a very unique thing in our industry is like we all left something to come here.
yeah, yeah.
No other industry has that. You like graduate college and you go do something like you're leaving school to go start a job versus like here you left a job to come to crypto. And I think that's a really cool like grounding thought to think of as
You
you're
meet
working in the space.
you meet a lot of really interesting people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and I think it's one of the coolest things about crypto where it builds you such a strong sense of community. Like we're good friends now. We have a bunch of mutual friends that otherwise I would have never met if it wasn't for just being in this industry, like shooting the shit in Telegram, meeting up in person like once every few months, but it's usually like outside of the country rather like than inside the country. What do you guys like before we kind of head off? What are you guys working on now? Like, what is there anything you want to plug that Flowdesk is doing, or anything important that you want to leave the audience with?
I think the biggest honestly goal of our firm this year, I would say, is related to like this tokenization of like equities. Like, we're market making stocks on Solana, on Hyperliquid. We're doing some stuff on centralized venues. We just think that's like a really cool place to be doing stuff because like it's at the kind of forefront of where this industry is going to be. So I'll kind of just leave it there as like, if anyone's kind of building within Hyperliquid or other ecosystems and you're kind of looking to get in touch with a market maker firm who can help you think about this and actually like implement it, we're open. My Telegram's just Hanson B underscore Flowdesk. You can reach out to us at sales.flowdesk.co. But really, it wasn't really meant to be a shill, but just like we really liked building in the space. And so if you have an idea or you want to like do something particularly in that area, like we would love to talk.
Yeah, and I can say for like a fact that is true about them. They're awesome to work with, super collaborative, and we're excited to have you guys on our cap table and looking forward to keep working with you guys. I appreciate the time, Hanson, and thanks for being our first guest, baby.
Let's go. Thanks, man.
Later, brother. All right, I'm gonna
See ya.
stop this. Woo.